Hello and welcome to May's Deal Clinic Live. So I'm very excited to introduce today's episode. As usual, welcome to all of our guests. We have a plethora of guests today, so I'm very, very excited. And I will mention you shortly. So for those of you who are watching live, please feel free to drop your comments and your questions in the chat box below. I will divert those to our panel today. And if you are watching on replay, please feel free to drop your questions to our team at admin. So that would be admin@sourcinginvestments.co.uk. Now, if you need to register, please do register at sourcinginvestments.co.uk. And if you want to watch the replay, that will be on our YouTube channel, Sourcing Investments Limited. There will be snippets of this going out onto our social media, Instagram, Facebook, as well as onto our YouTube channel. Now, there is no such thing as a silly question, so please do drop those into the chat box and I will keep my eye out for those as well. So as I mentioned, we are in for a treat today. We have a strategy that's actually very close to my heart. It's about assisted and supported living. So not so long ago did I have my own journey in that, looking after my mum when I was her full-time carer. So it's a pleasure to introduce today's strategy. Before I do, I want to introduce to us our regulars, which is Tim Sanders. He is our resident investor who works very closely with our investors and the team. And we have Bruce Mainwaring of Bond Finance Limited. Bruce and his team are great at what they do. They've nurtured so many strong relationships over the years that they've been in this industry and able to get finance that isn't actually necessarily available to other lenders as well. So our guest speaker and agent today is Gerbes of Freemans Road Consulting. Now, Jed is the director and founder, and they focus specifically within the Yorkshire area, mainly Leeds and Sheffield, due to the high rental demand and the great capital growth that you get there. So the strategies that they focus on are buy-to-lets, HMOs, and supported living. Now, they do offer a full end-to-end service. You have build team, interior designers, project and site management, as well as lettings management. And we'll go further into more detail around that. But what I'm going to do is play a video bio that we have of Jed's, just to go into a little bit of depth of what that actually is. Bear with me with my tech abilities, they do get better. And so I'm going to share Jed's video now.
Hey everyone, Gerbes here from Freemans Road Consulting. We help busy people generate healthy cash flow and long-term wealth through property without sacrificing time with family and friends. Freemans Road have partnered with the leading HMO developer in Leeds, Sam Watterson from Watts & Co Property. Together we have access to a full build team, project and site management, interior design, lettings management, and everything else required to deliver a fully managed end-to-end service. The key areas we target are in West and South Yorkshire, places like Leeds and Sheffield, as they offer solid yields and strong capital growth due to high rental demand. These areas will always have demand due to numerous universities, excellent transport links, local large employers and general infrastructure. We find East, West and South Leeds to be most suitable for investors looking to build or add to their property portfolios. This is due to property prices, rental demand and high capital growth. Buy-to-let investments work well here if your focus is long-term, benefiting from capital appreciation. We also help investors interested in HMOs and supported living investments. Supported living buy-to-lets offer much higher rents and therefore higher yields and short-term cash flow, while still benefiting from property values and rental increases over time. Depending on how you choose to purchase your properties and the loan-to-value / how much money you leave in each investment, you can expect standard buy-to-let yields of up to 8%, whereas supported living in HMOs can yield up to 12%. In general, you can achieve 2 to 3 times the net cash flow using a property for supported living versus standard buy-to-let investments. The return on investment or capital employed will vary depending on the type of investment, purchase price, location, amount of work required to add value, and of course the end value after refinance, should you choose to use the buy, refurbish, refinance model. Typically, year 1 returns for a standard buy-to-let are between 7 to 10%. Year 1 returns for supported living are between 10 and 13%, and 6-bed professional HMOs are 16 to 21%. As you know, these returns increase over time due to rental and property value increases. When it comes to areas that may be worth avoiding, this will depend entirely on your strategy. But in general, it's wise to steer clear of areas with very high crime rates, unemployment, and anywhere with a lack of desirable infrastructure, such as transport links, schools, healthcare centres, large employers, shops and amenities. It's important to always consider your target market. After all, they are the people who will be living in your property, so it really does matter what they think of the area and what it has to offer them.
Okay, Jed, over to you.
Thank you very much for that, Bonnie. Hi, everyone. I'm Jed. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, great. Really excited about this, actually. I've had a lot of people asking me about supported living recently on social media, and other investors that we speak to at the business as well. So I reached out to Bonnie and thought, hey, why don't we put together a short presentation to help people that are maybe have heard about it, they understand some of the benefits, but maybe don't know some of the fundamentals of how it works. So it's a great opportunity to do that. Are we wanting to go into the slide now, or am I just sort of introducing myself?
Yeah, you can go into the slides and just explain a little bit for the viewers what it is that you do. And I know that you gave a great synopsis in the video bio, but just really expanding on that for us as well, please, Jed.
Yeah, brilliant. So originally from New Zealand, as you can probably tell with my accent. I moved over here a couple of years ago as my partner's from York. So we're based in Leeds, and I started a property sourcing business called Freemans Consulting. And that was about a little bit over a year and a half ago. Had a little bit of progress, a little bit of what would you call it? A little bit of success in that area, but it was a lot to learn, as you can imagine. For any of the agents on here, you'll understand that. And yeah, eventually made the decision to reach out and actually partner with someone with a bit more experience as well, and that's Watson Co. So Sam Watterson, and he's been specialising in Leeds, doing full back-to-brick HMO conversions for a long time now. And that's been really awesome because it's given me access to a lot more resources than I had before, and also just being around people that do and are interested in what I'm interested in. So I guess for me, I've been able to bring to the table some sourcing experience on the buy-to-let side, but also branching into supported living as well, which is something that I'm really interested in. So yeah, that's basically where we're at. We have, as mentioned in the video, access to pretty much everything you need. We've got in-house build team, interior design, a lettings agency, sourcing. Obviously, me and a colleague called Ismail do the sourcing. Yeah, pretty much everything you need to be able to offer investors an end-to-end service, which is of course brilliant for anyone who is out of area, interested in investing in Leeds, and perhaps doesn't have the time to do all the work that's required. Maybe not so useful for a full-time investor or property developer that's been doing this for a lot longer than me. But yeah, that's a bit of a breakdown of where we're at.
Amazing. So I think let's talk about this supported and assisted living, Jed.
Brilliant. Okay, so I will share my screen then, yeah?
Please do, yeah.
Right, here we go.
And then Bruce, I'd like to bring you in quite quickly on this, because I think it's really important to see what we can facilitate from a lender's perspective with regards to the investors here present today, if that's okay.
All right. Yep, I've got some slides ready.
Amazing. Thank you. Okay.
I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect.
Cool. So Yeah, so basically we're going to be talking about supported living. So supported or assisted living. We're going to be discussing what it is in general, how it works, the importance of choosing the right provider, which I think is really, really important. Some key considerations for yourself as well, and then how you can get started. So I see there's a couple of different ways that you can get started in this space. So I'll go into detail on that as well. So before we do, I think it's important to sort of recognize, I speak to a lot of investors. We've got a lot of investors in our database here. Thanks, Sam. But also I've spoken to a lot of investors up to that point as well. And, I think it's fair to say that there's a number of things that people are really after. And some of those things, you're going to get more of with one strategy than you are with others. But in general, if we can sort of achieve these things, everyone's happy. That's how I see it. So we're looking for high demand. And by demand, I mean, is there a demand for those properties in that area? Because if there is, the prices are going to go up. Is there a demand for rent in those areas? Because if there is, the prices will go up, right? It's an investment. Strong cash flow. And there's, as you know, different strategies will mean different cash flows. Solid capital growth. I think that's really important. Leeds is fantastic for that. It's performed extremely well over the years. I've only been around so long. And I mean, I'll speak to an investor, straight off the bat, and I don't even need to tell them that Leeds is good. Do you know what I mean? They already know more than me about it. So fantastic. I'm really glad I live here for that reason. Yeah, favorable and predictable returns. I think this is something that is, obviously favorable is good. Predictable can be hard to achieve sometimes, but when you do have a good amount of data to back up the capital growth or the rental increases or the property value increases over time, that can really help with that. Resilience to economic downturns is definitely something that people would want. And I think we've all experienced that sort of thing with the cost of living crisis, COVID, numerous other things, a recession. It seems to never end. So to be able to build in some sort of resilience into your investments is definitely something that people are looking for, I think, more and more now. And we'll touch on that a little bit as well. I think Bruce will have something to say on that when it comes to the lending and interest rates and things like that. And then, of course, if possible, wherever possible, to be able to have a positive social impact is desirable. I think that's what we're all like at the end of the day. Back in the day, I did door-to-door sales, so I've met a lot of people face-to-face out of the blue, whether they wanted me to come round or not. And what I realized quite soon was the vast majority of people really are nice. They're lovely people. They don't mean you any harm. And I think we're designed that way by nature to actually want to help others. So that's what I see as the sort of tick boxes for a property investment. So here's some pictures. Why property and why a property business? So I've touched on it a little bit already, but I'll just run you through these. So I actually studied music. That was the thing that I wanted to do. I played bass guitar, did that up until about the end of 2011. Got a degree. It was like 4.5 years. I thought I was going to be a rock star and all the rest of it. Fantastic. I still do play music. I think by the time I'd done that much study, though, I was sort of a bit over it. From a business perspective, anyway, I could see that there were a lot of things missing and it didn't quite work for me. Still love playing music, but it's not really something I would do for a job, if that makes sense. I've got Bob Ross in there. So I come from an artist background, love a bit of Bob Ross, absolute legend, rest his soul. Yeah, so I come from an artist background. My mum's an amazing artist. My little brother's an artist as well, lots of paintings and stuff like that. So I did start doing that for a while. I came back into it a few years ago because I saw Bob Ross and I thought, wow, this is so cool. I'm going to get back into this. But I sort of went from visual art to sound art music because I found like it was a bit faster to get a result. And there's a really nice picture of my partner there. We're up the top of a mountain, which we love doing whenever we can. There's not as many mountains over here as there is in New Zealand, but it's okay. That one there is called Roy's Peak. If you ever do go to New Zealand, it's not far from Queenstown in the South Island. It's an area called Wanaka. Really beautiful. It was about 3 hours to climb up there. I think it's like 1,600 meters or something. So yeah, just amazing view up there. So that's something I want to get back into when I can. But that's just a bit about me. Cool. And yeah, so we've touched on it already, the partnership between Freemans Road and Watson Co, which has so far been really, really good. I'm absolutely loving it. And there's a picture there of a kitchen that they've done, and I thought I'd pop that in there. There's a few pictures of what Sam's done in the past throughout the presentation that I wanted to show people, just to give you an idea of the quality of work that they're able to do. Some of it's genuinely outstanding stuff. So yeah, really cool to be teamed up with them on that. So now we're getting to this part. Are you wanting me to just keep going here, Bonnie, or we're good to go still?
I think let's, if we can go to fast forward to the actual project itself that we're analysing, that would be really good. And then these aspects we can touch on after, if that's okay. Really want to touch on, because there's a lot of legalities, restrictions and complexities around this strategy, on the whole scope of it, not necessarily what you're doing here, Jed, but I think if we can get into that, get into the strategy and the numbers, and then we can maybe go back to these aspects here. I'm just conscious because Bruce does have another meeting after we've squeezed Bruce in, and he will need to leave in 30 minutes, if that's okay.
Yeah, I've
Okay,
got another presentation to give. Sorry, guys.
That's all right. So where do we want to go? Do you want to take a look at some numbers? Is that what you're thinking?
Yes, please. If we can just touch on your strategy specifically, and then the numbers, and we can come back to the considerations and what there would need to happen with regards to specifications and things like that.
Okay, well, we'll come back to this. So if we're going to jump straight into the numbers, not what I've planned for, guys, but that's all right. We're adaptable. We can do this. So what we're looking for is not massively complex. So ideally, we're looking for 2-bed end terrace or semi-detached properties. We're looking for them in Leeds and Sheffield. That's where the main bulk of the demand is at the moment. And yeah, so they'll be 2-bed end terrace or semi-detached properties. Residential, pretty straightforward. These are the kind of numbers that you can achieve in Leeds, and these are really quite doable at the moment. I feel right now is an excellent time to be buying as well, from what I'm seeing, even on market. Really good numbers at the moment. So a 2-bed end terrace in Leeds with a purchase price of £135,000. Now, with this strategy, the lending that we're able to get in terms of the loan to value or your deposit is often going to be a 65% loan to value. That's not to say that will always be the case depending on the lender, but in general, the mortgage broker that we're working with, this is what they're saying is available. So that does mean a slightly higher deposit than you would get with a normal buy-to-let. So you've got your deposit cost there of $47,250, and then your other buying costs as well. So you'll have legals, stamp duty, that sort of thing. I've used the number 15,000, and I've said for the refurb and furnishing. With this particular provider, they are requiring us to provide white goods. You could provide a bit more furniture if you wanted to, but it's not necessary. And that, to be fair, is a reasonably high number, but it's a safe number as well, because if you get in there and you realize, oh, do you know what, we are going to need a new boiler, or we are going to have to do a full rewire of the electrics, then it's worth, sort of building that in as a contingency, I suppose. I think for us with this particular strategy, the sweet spot as a maximum is to go for a combined cost of purchase price plus refurb and furnishing of up to 150,000 combined, if that makes sense. And that's where we get some good numbers. So yeah, so if with this one here, you would be looking at total cash needed or invested, if you will. We're going to be buying this with a mortgage right away, remember, of 69,732.12, very specific number, isn't it? And then by adding a bit of value to the property as well, we would expect that we would be able, that property value would then sort of be in the region of around 160,000. We've done things like new carpets, painting and decorating, potentially a rewire, fire doors, internal fire doors, all of the compliance certificates that are required, which there are a few of. So you'll need ECIR, which is the electrics. You'll need gas safety. You'll need a fire risk assessment done. EPC rating will need to be checked as well, and a few others. So the gross rent that we can get sort of as a maximum in Leeds at the moment, it's been signed off at 1,343. I know that's a very specific number, but it's actually, they do it weekly. So they will say 310 per week, and then you times that by 52 and then divide by 12. So that's how I got 1,343. So then if we look at the mortgage and holding costs, you've got about 597.45, leaving you with a net monthly cash flow of 745.54. So that's after your costs, which means a return on capital or return on investment of 12.8% for that one there. So that's that. Next, oops, why can't I go forward? Hang on a moment, there we go. So I think it's important with any investment to look at future returns. You can't guarantee future returns, but when you are working in a strong market such as Leeds, you can be pretty confident about it. So these values here are based on an annual capital growth of 5%, which I've got a list in my phone of the Leeds postcodes about this long where you get at least that much, if not more. I think Leeds has tracked somewhere near 6.9 for a long time as an average. So five's quite a safe bet. So if that were the case, 5 years on, your property value would now be 204,205, meaning that your equity, which is the property value minus what you owe on your mortgage, would be 116,455, which means your equity's actually grown over 5 years by almost £70,000, which is incredible. So definitely worth looking at. The net cash flow based on the monthly cash flow that we discussed over 5 years is 44,732, not bad. And then what I mean by combined ROI is combining the net cash flow and the equity growth over the 5 years, divided by the amount that you spent in the first place or invested. So that would be 163%. And if you divided that there by 5, which is your annual, that's an annual average return of 33%, which I think is incredible. And that was actually based on 5% capital growth per annum. Any questions on that, Bonnie, coming through, or did you have any?
No questions coming through. I'm just actually saying to our viewers live to please drop their questions into the chat box. So whilst we wait for those questions coming through, there was a question that I had on the slide one, which I cannot remember now. So in the meantime, I'm going to pass you over to Bruce because I'm conscious of the time, and then I can come in with my question afterwards. Bruce.
Yes, over to me. Right, sharing my screen. Can everyone see that?
And not yet. Jed, you will need to unshare if that's okay.
Yeah, let me see if I can click that.
There we go.
Button.
Can you see it?
Nope.
Oh, hang on. There we go.
Amazing.
Yep,
Amazing. And then we've got a question from Andy, which I will come back to after.
Okay, cool. All right. I just put a little presentation together just to cover off social housing in the bigger context of everything. Supportive living falls under that. So I just wanted to give you an idea of the background of social housing, where the funding started, and where we are now, basically. So a little bit about me. Started Bond Finance back in 2004 with my business partner. We've been going for 20 years. We're FCA regulated, family members of the NACFB. I've got 2 departments. I've got a buy-to-let and resi department, and I've got a commercial department. That's us. There's 14 of us now, based in the City of London, and I'm in the overseas office because I'm just about to do a presentation in Singapore after this one. So very international currently. So social housing. Social housing. What is social housing? Well, they got very, very popular with landlords because basically you basically rented the property out on either 3, 5, 7, 10-year FRI lease. So basically you got no maintenance, you got no voids, and the property's handed back to you. So it's sort of like you hand it over and forget about the property for 5 years. And yeah, 5 years FR lease is the general popular thing. Now, in the past, only Together Money used to lend, if I go back to the early noughties, that is. And then slowly and slowly, more and more lenders have come in. You've got the likes of Redwood Commercial, who do 65%, but most of my clients want 75% or more. This is Together Money. If you're UK national, these are the current rates. They've got close to 9% on a 2-year fix and 7.5% on a 5-year fix. They'll lend to a first-time landlord. They'll lend in Scotland. You don't need any income. Basically, with Together Money, you just need a pulse, and they'll lend to you. That is sort of like your go-to lender of last resort. But Fleet have come into the marketplace. And Fleet are more of a vanilla lender. I wouldn't put them in the social. I put them in the social housing thing, but not in living care as such. But they've got some great normal rates here. You've got a 5-year fixed at 5.59 and a 5-year fixed at 6.19 with 0 fees, which is fantastic. So this is more for your normal social housing. You're renting it out on a 3 or 5-year lease to the council or a local charity scenario. A very simple lease is required with break clauses in both directions. Then we've got Quantum. Quantum will lend to assisted living. Obviously, you can't be live-in care, but they will also lend on a Serco lease, which is generally very difficult to get funding on, basically because it's very difficult to remove the tenants under a Serco lease, and lenders basically want VP if they have to repossess the property. I don't know where they're going to repossess the property because the rent's guaranteed for 5 years, so it's very low risk, but a lot of lenders don't like the contract. Quantum use VAS, so we can get a yield-based valuation if it's a 6-bed, 6 ensuite, or if it's in an Article 4, or if it's sui generis. We've got a 5-year fixed rate there at 7.29 at 75%, quite good. HTB, they're a commercial lender. They will basically lend on MERS, but not Serco, and they do not want any asylum seekers in the property. There's no maximum lease length for them, so you can have a 25-year lease, which is fantastic. And they use VAS, so we can get yield-based valuations as well. And last but not least, Lenco have just started coming into the marketplace, and they've got some cracking rates here. 2-year fixed at 6.35 or 5-year fixed at 6.19. They're the same as HTB. With all these lenders, we always have to put a pre-app in. So I always ask the client to provide me with a copy of the lease and what the tenant profile is. And basically what I do is I work my way down the list. I start at the best lender and I work my way down until I get a yes. And failing that, we've always got Redwood or Together Money to lend on a social contract. Here's my contact details if you want to take a little snap. Bonnie normally puts the details in the little chatty thing at the bottom, whatever that's called. I can contact me via Sourcing Investments via Bonnie's platform. And that's me for a little overview about social housing and supported living and lenders and rates and stuff like that.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Bruce. And I have actually dropped Bruce's URL into the chat box. I will do that again for you, Bruce, so that they can contact you and the team, because you're really, really good at what you do. Bruce, somebody has echoed a question that I actually wrote down whilst you were presenting just then. And then I have two questions for Jed. But Arman has asked, what is the difference between Serco and the other leases? Because you mentioned with one of the lenders that they would lend to MERS and not to Serco. What is that based on?
Okay, so basically the two biggest social housing providers, bit supportive living, the two big ones are Serco and MERS. They're two big companies which the government outsource housing stuff to. Now, the problem with a Serco lease is that there's no break clause in the landlord's direction, therefore no break clause in the lender's direction. So it's very hard to get vacant possession. Recently, Serco have come across, are actually listening to people, and they've started putting break clauses in. This is why I need to see a copy of the lease every single time. It's 40 pages of boringness, but I need to read it. And I have actually got a few Serco leases through with Fleet. Complete miracle, I thought, but that's their new up-to-date version of their lease. But generally, 9 out of 10 times a Serco lease, I can't. I need to use Quantum. I've got problems. Quantum altogether money. MERS is sort of like the baby brother of Serco. They're not as big, but their contract is a lot more flexible. You've got break clauses in both directions. It's a lot more user-friendly. The Serco lease is generally all in the favour of Serco. That's the issue. I hope I answered the question.
Definitely. Well, it definitely answered it for me, and I hope you've answered it for Aman. I have another question for Bruce. I think the questions are coming in for Bruce because we know you're here for restricted time. So, Jed, I have got your questions ready. Don't worry. Bruce, I've got a question from Andy, and he said, upon refinance, are these only bricks and mortar valuations, or are these, or are there lenders that will do commercial valuation based on the leases?
Yes. So Quantum, sorry, let's start at the beginning. Together Money, bricks and mortar. Fleet, bricks and mortar. My next one was HTB. Sorry, my memory. They use VAS. No, they use appraisers. We can get a commercial yield-based valuation. I will caveat that and come back to you on that one. Quantum use VAS, same again, caveated. And Lenke use VAS, caveated. Why am I caveated? Right, I'm caveated because with VAS, we can get a commercial yield-based valuation on a 6-bed, 6-en-suite in a non-Article 4 area. VAS will allow us to instruct a long-form valuation, even though it's because its property's been over-adapted. VAS feel that it can never be sold as a single dwelling. So we are getting yield-based valuations. If it's in an Article 4 area, you're removing the PD rights between C3 and C4. Therefore, it can never be sold as C3. You're going to get a yield-based valuation. Same with sui generis. Sui generis is when it's 7 or more. You're locking in the planning that it can never be sold as C3. Therefore, you're going to get a yield-based valuation. So it's very much marrying up the property with the lender and the valuation methodology which you want to use. It's not just purely rates. You need to take in a few bits and bobs. But with Jed's properties, I'm right in saying, Jed, they're going to be 4 to 5 bed or even smaller. Is that correct?
We're primarily just targeting 2 beds.
2 beds. So 2 beds, if it's going to be 2 beds starting off, it's going to be bricks and mortar only. Okay, so for Jed stuff, bricks and mortar. And what Jed's presented is purchase price plus build cost plus a little bit of a premium. You can't completely, that is what I expect, because you can either buy Jed's property as an investor, or you do the same thing next door. And that's where the little bit of the premium comes in. So yeah, I agree with Jed's valuation methodology on a small refurb. Okay.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for that. Really appreciate you on that. Tim, I want to come to you, but I just want to ask these questions very quickly before I lose them in the chat box. So I have a question from Andy, Jed, and he's asked, is this for a single let with a provider?
Yeah, if by single let you mean single occupancy, yes. So there would be one tenant living in the property. Yeah, one assisted living tenant in the property, yes.
Amazing. Thank you so much. So, Andy, I hope that answers that question for you. I have a question. Next question is from a gentleman called Vasca. And Vasca has asked, what is the rate differential for this kind of deal between the ungeared rental yield and the mortgage interest rate? So he's really looking to see, for every £1 borrowed, how much surplus from the rent is there after paying the mortgage interest on the borrowing?
Okay, that's a slightly tricky question, but so the numbers that we just looked at, I'll break down for you. So the interest rate on that particular deal is 7.39%. All right. We started with £1,343 for the month, and we were netting, was it 750-ish, 748, 750? I can't remember exactly what that said.
745.54, I wrote it down.
Arrangement fee as well of 2.9%, which I have rolled into that loan, so into the monthly costs. So hopefully that answers. I don't know if you're wanting a percentage or something. I'm probably not too sure, but you know, you're getting over. But yes, if you start with a pot of 1343, you end up with about 748, 750, and that takes into consideration the costs and the cost of borrowing with the arrangement fee as well, and it's a 5-year fixed that I've used in that example.
Amazing, amazing. So Vasca, I know that you are muted, but if you could kindly just drop it in the chat box if that answers your question. So as Jed mentioned, it was 1343 that was the rent, and then the net was 745.54. Okay. Okay, brilliant. That's that. And then the next question, I've asked that one. Bear with me, gents. Okay, next question is from Andy, and I think, Bruce, this may come back to you as well as Jed. So if we did a C3 to C3B under PD, could you get commercial? Say that again.
PD. Is it
Yeah,
under
PD?
Dead.
Yeah,
Is
PD.
it C3 to C3B or C under PD, or do you need full planning out?
It's my understanding is it's still within permitted development because you're only doing a minor use change from one residential to another residential. However, what was the second part of the question? Because I feel like
the second part. So the full question is, so if we did a C3 to a C3B under permitted development, could you get a commercial uplift with the likes of Quantum? So this question is to both of you.
I doubt it very much, because if it's under PD, it should be interchangeable, a bit like C3 to C4 in a non-Article 4 area. So I very much doubt you get a commercial yield based on it.
So if you can just clarify that, Bruce, once you do a change of use to from C3 to either C3 to C4 or sui generis, that we can't change it back.
You can.
No. So C3 to C4 is interchangeable under PD.
Yeah.
So 1 month you can use it as an HMO, next month you can use it as a single dwelling. I'm not that au fait with C3B or C3C. I've only looked at a case last year, had a few problems with it. And if it's under PD, you should have that interchangeability, just like C3 and C4. Planning is required if there's an Article 4 direction, which terminates the PD rights. So you need planning to get for C4 and Article 4 area. You also need planning for sui generis. So whenever there's a planning application, you have to put another planning app to get it back to the old use. Under PD, interchangeable. Hope that's clear.
Yeah. So permitted development, PD, is flexible, and planning creates a very sort of
rock solid.
Yeah,
it's glue.
Amazing. I just think it's very important to make that clear.
Just to jump in here, is it worth giving a quick breakdown of what C3 is and C3B and C4, just for people who aren't so familiar with those terminologies?
Okay, so C3 is a family house. Okay, so it's a house here, which I'm in. Okay, C4, deemed by the lenders, not by the dictionary, Collins Dictionary, C4 by the lenders is 3 or more households living in a house sharing amenities. So 3 or more people is C4. And that goes from 3 people to 6. Okay. Now, if you take that C4 property and you put some assisted living in there and certain age brackets and stuff like that, you then need to get C3B or C3C planning. And this is where I get a bit sketchy, and this is where Jed can help me out.
That's very useful for people. Thank you. Yeah, good.
All right, cool.
Amazing. And so just very briefly then, the C4 that you described is pretty much HMOs.
Is HMOs, yeah. But I like to just talk about planning usage, and it gets people's brain thinking about the usage of the property and what planning you require. So that's why I talk about C3, C4, sui generis. Yeah, it gets people thinking about the usage. Okay.
And I think that's important, Bruce, because when they come to you, they need to have clarity on that, of what they intend the usage to be for, because that will affect the lending, correct?
Correct. And also the valuation methodology, which is very important for a professional investor.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, I have another question. Is there an appetite? This is from Alexander. Is there an appetite for larger HMOs, sui generis planning, circa 11 to 17 beds? To be honest, Alexander, I think that would need to be something that you would need to research yourself, or have an agent do that research for you. But gentlemen, is there anybody that would like to answer that?
Well, I can get people into debt on it. That's the main thing.
Yeah, I think that definitely is more, without confusing things, that's definitely something that you could look at for social housing, where there isn't necessarily as much of a need for care. The care provision changes things. And when you go into a larger setup, if you will, or perhaps blocks of flats and stuff like that, then it changes again into a different sort of entity or business at a commercial level. But I think when it's just, well, not just, but when it's social housing, just housing benefits, social housing with no care needed, then yeah, there could very well be an appetite there. I know of a couple of people who do sort of HMOs, 5-6 beds and larger, and they get mayor's contracts for those for social housing. So my understanding, there's a huge need, a huge demand in the market for all of this stuff. It's always going up. I mean, in the UK, there's just houses. So
yeah, totally agree. Totally agree with Jed. Totally agree.
Amazing.
Sorry, guys, I'm going to have to exit left because I need to be in Singapore.
You go for it. Thank you so much, Bruce, for spending time with us. Really appreciate your wisdom and knowledge and expertise. Look forward to
My pleasure, guys. My pleasure. Jed, lovely to meet you. Tim as ever. Bonnie. Toodaloo. Okay. Take care.
Thank you. Okay, so gentlemen, let me just double check with regards. So Alexander actually mentioned that he meant finance side. So Alexander, please feel free. We've dropped in the chat box the URL to contact Bruce and his team. So please feel free to reach out to Bruce to ask that question specifically. And if there are any questions that you think of after the show, please reach out to us via admin@sourcinginvestments.co.uk. Okay, so I believe, so Eva has a question. Is the 6-bed all ensuite HMO any good for social housing? Jed, I don't know if you're able to answer that, because obviously your specificity is the 2-bed single let.
Yeah, I mean, I can answer it. I think the best way to answer it is similar to how I just did with the other question, is that will be something you can look at for social housing. It may be, I don't want to say it's not, it may be something that's possible in supported living. Once again, there are many variables. So the amount of care required, staff members needing to be at, how often they need to be at the premises, what facilities are available for them. The provider that we're working with at the moment, they don't really have an appetite for that for supported living, but a social housing provider may very well.
Amazing. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for answering that very generously. What I want to be able to do is come to Tim, because Tim obviously is the number cruncher from an investor's perspective. So I just want to get some feedback from Tim, if that's okay, and then we can. I know that we had to cut out a lot of your slides, Jed. It's like we need an episode 2 on this. It's such a juicy topic. So Tim, can I come to you, please?
Yeah, this is really a really exciting topic, and I agree, Bon. I think a potential episode 2 here could well be on the cards. So yeah, just to touch on a few things. Firstly, back from your slides at the very beginning, Jed, I'm a huge Bob Ross fan as well. So I did a lot of studying and a lot of projects on Bob Ross. So great artists. And also, my mother has recently just been to Wakina in New Zealand on the South Island. So she absolutely loves it around there with the pictures and the mountains that you talk about. So yeah, she was absolutely raving about it. So that's great. Yeah. So I've got basically the numbers you provided are pretty bang on compared to what I've been doing on my end. There's very little difference that I found from them. So I think these are great in terms of getting your net cash flow at 745 a month with your mortgage rates. The mortgage rates are pretty bang on what you've used there at 7.39. I think you said you've used in your calculations. My specific one at the moment that I've got a small supported living up near Newcastle. It's exactly what you've just said. It's an end terraced. It's a 2-bed. It's brilliant. It's a lovely gentleman that's got Down syndrome in there. He has a carer come in sort of once a day. He needs to be in walking distance to shops. He needs to be very close to the amenities, and it's working great for me. I get a very similar sort of uplift compared to what you're talking about here from the normal rent on that particular one. So I've got very little gripe with all these. I think they're brilliant numbers. They work very well. My particular mortgage rate on mine for that is 7.69 at the moment, which is high for what I would like. I can refinance in about 18 months and bring that down. So pretty bang on for all that. Just to say that obviously everyone's talking about the C3, C4, C3B, all that. It sounds very complicated to people, but actually it doesn't need to be complicated if you've got the right people around you, if you've got the right teams, and you know some very simple specifics, then it doesn't need to be as complicated as it's sounding. And especially with what with fleet mortgages, with Quantum that Bruce is talking about, there are some very competitive rates out there. So it's a very good time to be looking at this, especially when we've got to think about the living crisis at the moment. We need to get our yields up. Yields are important at the moment. We need to squeeze every penny we can, because as landlords, we are getting squeezed in the UK as a whole. So my overall take is absolutely brilliant. I like the direction of these, and I like the ethos behind them as well, which is you're helping the local community, you're helping people in need. So that's really my 2 cents at the moment.
You know, I love that, and thank you, Tim. And just for the viewers that are watching live with us now, and just in case you didn't catch that, and also for our viewers that watch on the replay, Tim actually has his own properties as a landlord that are geared towards supported living. So that's really key And I think great, Jed, that actually what Tim has analysed, that, you know, with the numbers that you've provided, is very similar to what he's getting, other than your mortgage rates there, Tim, right? So I apologise. I don't mean to laugh. I'm just explaining the difference there. So, you know, Jed's highlighted something that you're able to get in, you know, that's available on the market now, because Tim, you probably had that a while ago, right?
Yeah, unfortunately for me on that one, I got the refinance through on that one just at the wrong time when the rates were going sky high, sort of 18 months ago or whatnot. So yeah, for me it wasn't a brilliant time, but it was necessary. I needed some capital out, so I had to take the hit at that point. But yeah, at the moment there's some great products on the market that are looking much better. So for me, what's good for me is that the margins are so good that I'm able to do that, and it's a short-term hit for the long-term gain of what it is. And I mean, I've got these guys on, I think it's a 3-year lease with them at the moment, and the company are brilliant. So yeah, fingers crossed that gets a little better for me in the short term.
Amazing. Jed, I want to come back to you. I know that we're nearly out of time, but is there anything from your presentation that is really crucial to convey to our viewers that you weren't able to present beforehand, just to the reshuffle of the show?
Yeah, I put a lot of time into this as well, Bonnie. So
Ah.
let me think. I think there are a couple of key things. Which one?
I think it's important while are you going to show your slide? Oh, the coffee wore off a long time ago, people. Slides. Are you going to show your slides? Sorry.
Yeah, let me jump in. I'll see, because we want to keep this reasonably short. Where is it? Let's jump back in. Can everyone see that?
Yes, perfect.
Right. So I think this is probably a good starting point for things that are important. So these are questions that get asked a lot, because people, you know, and it's fair enough, you want to know what's going on with your property. And often we're comparing it sort of with a buy to let or an HMO or something like that, right? So what I get asked a lot is, you know, well, what if my property's not looked after? Like it gets trashed, and what happens then? What if the tenants need to move out? If we're signing a lease for a certain period of time and the tenants need to move, what happens there? The property's not suitable for the provider. Perhaps you've got some properties already and you would like to use them, lease them to a supported living provider, but you don't know whether or not they're going to be suitable. What if you need to sell your property? Things happen in life, right? You may need to sell, or if you can't get lending. Now, on the lending side, we've covered a lot, so I won't go too much into that. However, really important to note just on the lending side, they very often like to see that you've got some landlord experience. So similar with a commercially valued HMO, they may want to see that you've got 12 months or at least a couple of buy-to-lets in your portfolio or something like that. So something to bear in mind if you're brand new to property investing, that it might be a bit harder to find a lender. Not saying you can't, just might be a little bit harder. So the importance of choosing the right provider will mean that you can kind of cover off all of those questions. So first of all, they're going to manage the property. There's not going to be any management costs. And you want to make sure that they're going to do a good job of that, which means regular inspections and staying in touch with the tenants to make sure that everything's okay, right? An FRI lease, Bruce mentioned, and I'll just quickly tell you what that is, just in case you're unaware. It's a full repairing and insurance lease. Essentially, the maintenance and repairs throughout the lease period are the responsibility of the company leasing the property, which is the supported living provider, housing provider in this scenario. So they'll take care of any maintenance or repairs throughout the lease time. Another thing that you can get from a really good provider is they will either cover all or some of the voids. So if a tenant did need to move out, then because they've got such high demand, they'll be able to find another one very quickly, you know, in a couple of weeks or something like that. It's usually the case. The one that we're working with, that they're having to say that they can't help a number of people because they don't have enough properties. They need more properties. So that's great. And they will also, when it comes to whether or not your property is suitable, the provider will be able to give you based on their requirements for the FRI lease and also the requirements of the care element, so the people providing the care, if they're a separate company. They'll be able to give you a very detailed property spec, which will tell you whatever adaptations are required. For example, if it was a physical disability, then obviously we don't want 3 stories in the property. We're going to want a bungalow or something like that, single story, maybe with a ramp, things like that. If there was going to be a carer staying overnight or something like that, then they would likely need their own bathroom. So maybe you would do an ensuite bathroom in one of the bedrooms, something like that. The break clause Bruce touched on, so this is to do with whether or not if you needed to take back possession of your property or sell your property. Usually it's a 3-year break clause. That's very common. So let's say you're leasing the property for 5 years. There's a break clause that states if you need to end the tenancy earlier than 5 years, well, as of 3 years, you just need to give 2 months notice. 2 months is quite common. The provider we're working closely with now, though, they're very, obviously they want people to lease the properties for long periods of time, but they're very understanding. They know that things change, they get it. So they would even negotiate, ending it sooner if you really did need to. That's a discussion you could have. And basically they would find a new property for that tenant and then, they'll give it back to you. So I think that's really good. And yeah, specialist mortgage brokers and lending is what you'll need when it comes to the lending side of things. Let's start going forward. Right, so that's those numbers. Just quick rundown. Here's a property that I viewed just the other day that we're hoping we're getting. And it just gives you an idea of what the properties look like. So you got the living room. The annoying thing about this property with the photos is the bedrooms and the living room just all look the same. They've got the same fireplace, the same carpet. So this is that property. So yeah, you've got your living room, kitchen, bathroom, everything's there. I put the electrics in because I'm having the electrician take a look at this. It's only a 2-bed, but I feel like it may need a rewire. I'm not certain that there's enough sort of capacity there for a modern property, but we'll get an answer back on that one. So yeah, there's another before and after. So this is, I think, the most important part. You've basically got 2 options when it comes to this. If this is something you're genuinely interested in, brilliant, number one, because the demand is through the roof and we need more people investing in this space to provide the properties. The first thing you could do, obviously, is you could do it yourself. You're going to benefit from learning a lot, excellent, and also saving some money than you would spend on, say, hiring us or a different property sourcing business. You wouldn't have those fees, so that's going to help with your returns. There's a lot to research, so you're going to want to contact and build relationships with numerous providers, understand their needs, understand their reputation in the market, because that will be important to the lenders and everyone involved, to be fair. The kind of demand they have, the locations they work in, the sort of rents that are achievable based on the property types, the property spec. You can also do your background research on these providers as well. Highly, highly recommended. You can go to a website where you just Google regulator of social housing, and that will give you a website. You'll be able to find them. You'll be able to see if they've done anything wrong in the past, that sort of stuff. Really good. You will need to get a copy of an exact lease, like Bruce was saying as well. You will need that when you go to get lending. Then yeah, like he mentioned, if you can get sort of a decision in principle or something from the lender based on what they're able to give you before agreeing to purchase the property, then that would be a good idea as well, just to make sure that you're covered in that respect. And then from there, just get out there, do your property search, track one of these down. Yeah, it's a lot of work. The research that I've put into this has been probably at least 10 months. But doing other stuff alongside it as well, obviously. But if you're full-time and property investor, you can do it a lot quicker than that. But it's a lot of phone calls, building relationships and speaking to people. And then obviously the other option is you can partner with a property business who already has these relationships, has done the research for you, understands their area, the property market, the numbers. And then, yeah, so this is what we're doing for investors at the moment. We'll source the property, oversee the refurbs in-house. We'll agree the lease terms with the provider. We'll help with putting you in touch with the correct, with a mortgage broker who can help with the right lenders. And then if you're a bit of a property portfolio builder, then we can just repeat the process. So yeah, those are the two options. I mean, I don't really see any other way of doing it, right? You either get out there and do it yourself or have someone help. And this option here is best, obviously, if you live out of area, you don't understand the area as well. You're probably really busy because you do an excellent job at the job that you do now. So you don't really have the time or the inclination to get out there and do all this stuff. Yeah, so these are the providers we work with. In general, we want to make sure that they're offering favorable terms and that they're, it's going to be a good option for the investor. One really good thing with these guys as well is they're actually offering an annual rent increase. So that wasn't included in the 5-year numbers because I don't know exactly what that will be each year. But yeah, they base it in general on inflation, so CPI. So you're going to get an increase every April, I believe it is, on the rents as well, which is pretty cool to bolster those returns over 5 years. But yeah, that's it. I've rushed through that there for you, Bonnie. Here we are. If there's another bit of a before and after there for you of the stuff that's been done to a really high standard. So yeah, thank you very much for your time. If you did want to book a call with me, you can just use that QR code. I'm sure Bonnie will probably send out some contact details and stuff as well. But yeah, I'm more than happy to speak to anyone. It's not really a sale. You do have to, it does have to be right for you. You should be offering a level of commitment as well as a landlord to something like this, because the people that are moving in, they want to be able to call that place home, and ideally for a long time. So bear that in mind. Not for everyone, but there's a huge demand there. There is really good returns as well, and yeah, I think it's an excellent strategy. It's what I'm going to be investing in. So brilliant. Yeah, I like it. If you want to book a call to have a chat about what we do as a business, or even just to discuss a few more details about just doing this yourself, I'm more than happy to. It's all good.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that, Jed. And I just want to double check something, because Dennis did ask, how do you find the providers? But I think you already mentioned it. I jotted it down myself, to go to the regulator of social housing, and you'll be able to find providers there.
Well, you list every single one that's registered on there. The tricky part there is, this is what I found, is it'll often be the business name, but they may not be trading as their business name, their company name. So it might not, there's not like a link to their website. Do you know what I mean? It's just literally an alphabetical list. I don't even know if it's alphabetical. I don't even know if they've done it that well. But yeah, they're all on there. I mean, there's an absolute ton of them out there, as you can imagine. What worked really well for me was I joined a networking group who were all about supported living. Their idea was to connect investors with supported living providers. And so I did a couple of Zoom calls on different weeks and spoke to some different ones and connected really well with a couple of them, and they're the ones that we now work with. So yeah, Facebook groups, I mean, property investor meetups of any kind, just let people know, hey, I'm interested in supported living and social housing. Do you know anyone who's done that? And you'll find people. That's how I came across the mortgage broker that we work with. That was through another investor at a property investors breakfast in Leeds. So yeah, working, chat. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And I do, what you're doing, as I mentioned at the top of the show, this is a strategy close to my heart, because not so long ago, I was my mum's full-time carer in her last 12 months. So this is crucial. And as Tim rightly mentioned, there's more demand for strategies like this because of the economic situation we're going through on a global level, and the need for these strategies, because we are reaching older ages, and with that unfortunately comes limitations in the physical vehicle that we call our bodies. So there are things whereby, depending on, because I have got people asking certain questions, and I will divert them back to yourself. So if they can't scan your barcode, feel free to reach out to us at admin@sourcinginvestments.co.uk, or you can email me, bonnie@sourcinginvestments.co.uk, and I will do the introduction to Jed for you. Because there's such a huge scope in this strategy, assisted or supported living, because some properties, based on what we were discussing earlier, do need to go through amendments and yeah, refurbs to include, as you mentioned, the ensuite. But also, when I was living with my mom, there were things like because it is a it's not a bungalow. It would have been so much easier, but we had to have a stair lift. We had to have the ramp installed to the property to make that a more convenient living area for her. So there are huge amounts of different, and it's such a bespoke, it's not a one thing fits all. I just want to be able to point that out to the investors today. They're watching live and even those on replay. It's not a one thing fits all. It is about really finding an agent that can deliver this very, very well, and also a provider where what they absolutely need, because each property that is sourced is very specific to the client that they are sourcing that for. Would you say that's right, Jed?
Absolutely, yeah. It's definitely a case-by-case basis every single time, which makes it interesting, definitely, varied. That's true. And I think just to touch on one thing as well, how do I put this? So I think what's very obvious to people, any buy-to-let landlords that are on this call, will have noticed, that there were a number of people that got these really low rates at one stage. I think it was a 1.89 and 2% and stuff like that. And they're like, great, get loads of these buy-to-lets, excellent. And then the rates all went up to like 5%, right? And then all of a sudden, all of these properties are underwater in terms of their financials. With something like this, you're locking in a higher net cash flow, 2 to 3 times in general when it comes to leads, probably, at a higher interest rate, significantly than the buy-to-let interest rate now. And you're making more money now. So over the next 5 years, whatever happens, if you end up going back to a buy-to-let mortgage, it's not going to be the end of the world. We would hope that we would see those come down, right? But I just think that's a good point as well. If you can make something work at a higher rate, then I think that's sort of future-proofing yourself and your investment quite well.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. Tim, have you got any closing words of wisdom that you would love to impart on our viewers today?
Actually, just touching on what you've just mentioned, what I haven't mentioned is that just down the road from where I live here was my grand's house, and my gran was in supported living for the last years of her life. That then got passed to my dad, which has now been passed to my mother. And we now have a gentleman in there who's got MS, a gentleman called Rupert. He's a great guy. And I pop down and I do the little bits of the maintenance for it myself. And things like, you're right, we need an electric garage, we need the ramps, he had a carpet in the living room, but actually he was like, right, actually, because of my wheelchair, a nice laminate flooring would be better. Are you guys happy for us to do that? And we've got an epic, great hard floor in the whole of the flat now, the whole of the bungalow, because that's what was needed for them. So it goes both ways in terms of it's actually benefiting us. They wanted to put air conditioning in because of his issues, and so you need to be quite adaptable in terms of what these guys are after, but at the same time you're making someone's life so much more comfortable, so much nicer. And for me, it's a strategy that I like doing, not just because it gives higher yields, but because you feel good about what you're contributing. So for me, that's a big part of it. And that's part of the reason initially I got into property, was to create homes for people rather than just to try and make money. So that's my takeaway. And I think it's a very good strategy to be involved in.
I love that. I love that. And I think with that, that's the perfect way to end today's show. Thank you so very much, gentlemen. I want to thank our viewers who are live today. So Alexander, Amit, Andy, Avatar B, CE, I'm not really sure what your name is, but CE, great to have you here. Dennis, Eva, Gary, Benga, Ishmael, Jane, Kay, Malcolm, Mark, Petra, Ruby, Salim, Sid, Teta, Tony, Vasca, William, Wise, and Ziza and Adi. It's been wonderful having you all live with us. And for those of you that watch us on the replay, I thank you as well too. So with that, I look forward to our next episode. Feel free to email me at bonnie@admin Bonnie at sourcinginvestments.co.uk or admin at sourcinginvestments.co.uk and let us know what you loved most about today's show, if you have any other questions, and also if you'd like to see a part 2. With that, I am going to end the show there. I thank you all for joining us, and I wish you all an amazing day ahead. Bye for now.